That's okay, thank you. And I'm gonna try to do my best to keep my machine up and running because it likes to time out on me.
So is Dan our staff support tonight?
Dan,
Shannon's here virtually.
Oh, virtually.
Yeah, so she's on the East Coast, so
Ah,
we're both supporting you tonight.
yeah,
great.
we have double support. So Jody, do you know Dan?
I have not met Dan.
Hi.
Hi, Dan. I'm Jody Timms,
Hi.
Fairfax Climate Action Committee.
Hello, come on in. Nice to see you. Well, we can just do a very quick round of introductions just to let everybody know who's in the room. I'll get started. I'm Sarah Margulies and I'm a city council member. And I was appointed as the liaison to the Climate Action Forum to work with the community and bring our information back to council.
Yeah.
I'll turn it to you, Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie, resident here in Larkspur, down on Olive Avenue. My neighbor over here, James. Of course, interested in climate work, and I've been working a little on the side to help track some things in the climate action plan alongside Sarah and Shannon. So very happy to help this group however I can.
Thanks.
Katie, what's your last name?
Straub Hutton.
Straw.
Yep.
Okay.
It's yeah.
Yeah, so as I said before we sat down, my name's Jody Timms. I'm active with Fairfax Climate Action Committee. But we have a once a month meeting of a collaborative of all the different advisory groups and local governments that work on climate. And so I'm here in part to see what y'all are up to. And I mean, I was on the Zoom last time, so it's just wonderful to see you rolling forward and developing. And as I mentioned too, there's a student who might join us, who's an intern with 350 Marin this summer, who is going to a lot of meetings with me to get a feel for what is happening with climate in Marin.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, if he makes it, which I think he will, he's a urban environmental and urban policy and economics major at Occidental, and learning about general plans and climate action plans and how do you do this work in the real world. So that was an introduction for him. If he comes, we don't need to interrupt.
Okay, great.
Since-
Thank you, Jody. And you want to introduce yourself since you just walked
Yeah,
in?
I'm sorry I'm late.
No worries.
Scrambling.
Okay.
I'm Laura Anderson, and I don't know what people have been saying, but I missed the first meeting was it 2 months ago? But I am just very interested in what the city is doing to move forward with the climate initiatives, and I'm so pleased I went through all of the minutes and all of the attachments from tonight's meeting, and it's just so impressive. It feels a little unwieldy, and so I'm eager to hear what we can do to make it a success.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, Laura.
You're welcome.
It's good to see you.
James Bill, retired architect, focused on low energy and passive house buildings, mostly residential buildings. So here, sort of join the fray.
Thanks, James. Welcome back.
Robin Muller, I'm here as part of the Larkspur Climate Group and as an interested Larkspur citizen to the, as Laura is. We're glad to see that the city is really picking up the climate bucket and optimistic about what we can do together.
Thanks, Robin.
David Muller, and I'm the lead for the Larkspur Climate Group, and several people here are members of the Larkspur Climate Group, so good to see you all. And so I'm here to help move our Larkspur climate actions forward and implement that climate action plan, that really good plan that the council adopted. So
Thanks, David. Great to see you.
We have some people in there online too.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. I see Dante.
Oh, he's Dante online.
Mm-hmm.
Ah,
You want?
Yeah, go ahead and hi, Dante. Can you hear us?
Hi, can you hear me? Sorry about that, Jody.
Yes.
Yes, there was a couple things I had going on, but I'm Dante. I was just the one who was Jody was introducing as well. I'm a student. I'm interning with 350 Marin. I'm just as Jody said, I'm from Mill Valley, but I go to school at Occidental College. I'm just getting a really great lay of the land of all sorts of climate action initiatives and programming through Marin. So good to be here.
Thanks, Dante. And then Jillian Schultz. That's SCHULTZ, correct?
Yes,
Hi, Jillian.
I guess I don't have a camera. Oh, anyway,
Okay.
my name is Jillian Schultz and I'm a biologist, but I live in Larkspur and I have a strong interest in climate mitigation issues. So I came to the first meeting and I decided to keep coming, but I have a bad cold right now, so I didn't want to share. So I'm
Oh,
gonna
thank you.
announce it.
Thank you for keeping it at home.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming back. Glad to have you. All right, and then we'll have Shannon maybe say a quick hello since she's online too.
Hey there, my name is Shannon O'Hare. I'm the Assistant City Manager for Larkspur, and along with Councilmember Margulies, I'm one of the folks who staffs this forum and supports all the work that we're doing.
Thanks, Shannon.
I'm Dan Schwartz. I'm staff tonight because Shannon couldn't be here in person. So I'm here to run the computer, and I think I'm supposed to speak on one of the items tonight. But
You have a talking part.
I can answer any questions you have.
And thank you for opening the doors.
Yeah, I will talk to the library staff, but they're not used to there being
Sure.
here tonight.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining and for your brief introductions. I'm going to start with a report out to you about a couple of things. Last month, I guess it's 2 months ago now, April, I attended the Climate Center's Policy Summit. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of information about the Climate Center. They've been around since 2001 and have been a leader in making climate solutions a reality in California at speed and at scale. It's a think tank, do tank, working to turn bold ideas into action for a climate safe future. And generally, they focus on 2 to 3 bills a year to try to get passed through the California State Legislature. Last year, they were really focused on State Bill 59, which is all to do with bidirectional core battery capabilities. And this year, they are focused on SB 684 and AB 1243. Both are embodying Polluters Pay Climate Superfund Act of 2025. So building a framework aimed at holding major fossil fuel companies accountable for climate changes in California. In summary, what they talked about was a lot of the work and the progress we've made in California. 30% of all our new vehicles are EV. Greenhouse gas emissions have decreased by 20% since 2020. And we've created 500,000 new clean energy jobs in the state of California. And we were the first state to pass mandates to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So the overall attribution of the climate crisis, they talked about, increasing number of homes flooding, increasing area of land burning, and major damage being done from hurricanes. I don't think that's news to anybody here. And so, in the end, we're all at risk of losing our homes. And what they wanted to really bring home at the meeting, and one point that they made really clear, is that the majority of our population is worried about climate crisis. We're in the majority, 56% of us are worried. And it's really important that we talk about it and that we help people make aware that they are among the majority. It's really important to have open conversations about this because I think people are afraid to talk because they don't really know where other people stand. So they suggest, providing hope through conversation and specifically through economic benefit, right? We can all save a lot of money if we're doing the right thing by our environment. And so, that was a lot of what the discussion was. There were 4 different tracks. Shannon actually attended with me. The 4 tracks were either California Energy Future, phasing out polluting fuels, carbon drawdown, and critical policy reforms for 2025. I took the California Energy Future and the carbon drawdown. One was about using bidirectional EVs to build a more resilient, reliable grid. I do have some information on that and continuing to focus and follow up with the folks that were there. They provided a bunch of case studies for cities in California that are using these electric school buses as resiliency and actually earning income for the cities, putting power back to the grid. So I have some things to share there, but overall for me, it was an opportunity to network with people, learn from people who are big hitters in this realm of climate control and trying to mitigate, the crisis as it exists. Some of the people who spoke were Catherine Hayhoe. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's a climate scientist, professor at Texas Tech. Wonderful. She had a lot of strong information to share, and I'm now following her. Michael Mara, who's actually a local in Mill Valley. So it was overall for me, it was just a very good opportunity to meet some heavy hitters and to learn more about ways that we can collaborate and get involved to do more here in Larkspur and work with some of these other people who are trying to make some progress. So does anybody have any questions about that?
Can you say again the name of the think tank?
The Climate Center?
Climate Center.
Yes, yep. And this was their policy summit, and they hold that once a year up in Sacramento. And that was on April 22nd. Okay, if there's no questions, then I'm going to move on to my report out to council. So we met in April, and as you may recall from that meeting, or if you weren't at that meeting, the design for this forum is that we meet every other month, and on the off months, I report back to council what the recommendations from the Climate Action Forum are for council. So my report back to council last month was that the council wanted to have, the Climate Action Forum, sorry. I'm gonna call us CAF, if that's okay with you, because it gets a lot long in the tooth. But CAF would like to emphasize that we revise the April 2023 draft resolution for adopting REACH codes to, so in April of 2023, a draft resolution was presented to council, and at the time it was tabled due to a court, something that was going through the courts about all electrification. So the recommendation from our last meeting was to bring that draft resolution back to council and to ask council to revive it and edit it such that it eliminates the all electrification requirement, but it does continue along with enhanced energy efficiency for major remodels through a point system, as well as enhanced EV charger requirements to have a better EV infrastructure in Larkspur. So that recommendation was made on, I want to say June 4th. No, sorry, May 4th or 5th. And the council directed staff to go back and redraft the bill. And so that process is underway. That was the recommendation. I also reported back to council that we had 18 members attend, which was a really great show for our first CAF meeting, and that we had come to a decision about the mission statement and, just that we were working on iterations of a dashboard that would be used to report out to both the general public as well as council. So that was my report back to council on May 5th. So I hope to have some more things to bring back to them on actually, council's going dark for July and the first meeting in August. So is that right? Am I getting that right?
Second meeting
Sorry.
of July and the first meeting in August.
Great. So I will be able to report back to council on July 2nd about this meeting.
Great.
Yeah. Are there any questions about my report out to council from our last CAF meeting? Any comments?
Is council, the other council members, the other board generally supportive of CAF? Did you get a lot of questions from them or?
did not get a lot of questions. I would say yes, generally supportive, definitely. I mean, it was the decision of the council, and I believe it was a unanimous decision to create CAF, right? Do you remember? Yeah. So in that respect, yes, everybody is absolutely supportive of CAF. When I reported back, from the last meeting, there were questions about what's in the ordinance, and those questions were going to be revisited when the draft was revised and put back in front of council. But other than that, they were supportive of moving in that direction and giving staff the direction to go revise the ordinance.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I would just add, I attended that meeting. It was great, really, to see that report out and engage the council and staff in that way. Because at least from my view, the main reason to establish this climate action forum is to get that two-way conversation going. Because absent that, the only way the council can engage in a matter is if it shows up on the agenda. Public can bring up a matter, but if it's not on the agenda, there can't be any discussion. So all of a sudden, by having this intervening month report out, it provides a direct conduit and opportunity for the council to actually have a discussion about items that are brought forward by Sarah as her conduit role for the climate action forum. So it really, in that respect, I thought it was terrific. And like I mean, how else would we have ever gotten the ordinances from 23 back up in front of the council? You know, it would have taken getting it on the agenda, probably would have been a couple meetings down the road and so on. So I thought it worked really well.
Thanks, David.
And she did a good job too.
Any other comments?
It sounds like the ordinance in question the language is being revised by staff. It sounds like that's the next step.
That's correct.
Do we have a sense of timing for when that might be ready for review for the council next?
I do have something, let me go to it quickly, because I have it right here, and I was given a timeline that, suggested that right now it's in the city manager's office for review. And then it would go to Community Development Department, which is planning and the chief building official. And then after that, it would go to the city attorney for review. And those 3 items were suggested to be complete by summer 2025. And that the finalization of the ordinance, sorry, for the council consideration would also be completed by summer 2025. So I have asked for if it's possible to expedite that and speed it up. But then after that, there's a process in which city council needs to, the draft ordinance needs to be brought to council and community as a business item for discussion, which right now is aiming for September. And then after that meeting, the staff would incorporate any requested changes, which can take 2 to 3 weeks. And then there would be a first reading, in which it would be noticed in paper of record and at city facilities 10 days prior to a public hearing, so that the public is aware. This is something we'll be discussing. And so these items, then there's another city council meeting, which talks about a first reading and a public hearing, which is required by law. And it's brought before the community. And so that was looking like, if passed and incorporate changes and move to a second reading, would be aiming for October or November. So I've reached out to staff to see if there's a possibility of condensing this timeline. And I'm particularly interested to see if we can get something done prior to October 1st.
Great.
But
It sounds
for,
like there are a few opportunities for review, for example, from this group to be able to see that language and make
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah,
Great.
and just some of the history on this real briefly. These were fully developed ordinances. There was a suite of 3 model ordinances that were developed mostly by the Marin County Sustainability Team, but with input with a bunch of community groups, including ours. And then several jurisdictions adopted the suite. 6 of the 12 Marin jurisdictions adopted all 3. And then this court case came out that knocked out local jurisdictions' ability to require all electric for newly constructed buildings. And Larkspur at that time had already discussed adopting these 3 ordinances, and Larkspur had a fully developed version ready to put in Larkspur municipal code. There seemed to be support, and the whole thing got stalled because of that court decision, because no one quite understood at first, was it going to affect all 3 or just 1 or so. And so it just sort of got shelved, never got revived. So the 2 remainder components that Sarah described are not affected by that court case. But now there's some urgency, if you're going to adopt them, to get them adopted before another pending state bill might take effect. So we'll talk about that more. So there's sort of an
Yes.
interesting dynamic.
You're talking about 306.
8306, yeah.
Mhm.
So there's sort of an interesting dynamic here, but there may be a window to go ahead and get those 2 up, as 6 of the 12 jurisdictions already have.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, David, for that context.
I don't want to
Important.
over inform, but there's some linkages here that are important.
And that require urgency to sort of, if we
Exactly.
do want to see improvement on more electrification, finding the appropriate windows.
We
so
better
they
get
don't
it in
yeah.
before October, done before October.
Yeah, I see.
So-
And then is it, I suppose it's implied that if only like 2 of the initial 3 are sort of available for even moving
Correct.
forward. Can I interpret that to mean that those are a less than complete all electrification plan? Like, I guess, let me put it very differently. What exactly was the court decision that why all electrification would be not
Yeah.
ideal?
The simple answer is they decided that local jurisdiction's authority to require all electric for newly constructed buildings was preempted by a federal act. And that only the federal government had that authority.
Okay.
And it went to the 9th Circuit District Court, federal court.
Does that mean that the 6 cities that did move forward with all 3 then had to revoke them?
Oh, very interesting. Most of those cities, and it may be all of them, literally got letters from the plaintiff in that case, saying you have an ordinance that is in conflict with this court decision,
Right.
and you need to rescind it. Is basically what it said, or you know, we or others will sue you. I saw some of those letters. They were real. They all were saying just different jurisdictions. That was the California Restaurant Association sent out, their attorney sent those out. So of the 6, a couple of jurisdictions did actually formally rescind,
Okay.
but the others simply said, we'll stop enforcing. And as far as I know, there's been no action. The value of the stop enforcing, the beauty of it is it left it on the books.
Right.
So that would-be applicants could see it was the intent of this jurisdiction to head in this way.
Wow.
So I think it was about 3 rescinded and 3, the county for one, left it on the books. They're just not enforcing. And San Rafael, which oftentimes Larkspur looks to as a model for action, formally rescinded. So it was a mix.
Case by case.
And Fairfax didn't, they left it on.
Interesting. Thank you.
Good. Okay, so let's move on to our next item on the agenda. And that is for an update from staff on Marin Climate and Energy Partnership. So Shannon, I believe, is going to chime in here and start with item 3.1. Shannon, for Zero Waste Marin funds for the compostable items. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, Dan, let's go ahead and screen share.
Make it panels. So
I'll go ahead and just start. So this is, I don't want to say it's a minor item, but I thought it was something that would be of interest to this group. So Zero Waste Marin is a joint powers authority that consists of, let me join as a panel.
removing those. Come on.
Yes. That all of the cities and towns in Marin participate in, as well as the county of Marin. And the shared goal and mission of that Joint Powers Authority is primarily to handle a lot of the regulatory responsibilities we have around household hazardous waste, around new laws around requirements for recycling, composting, and other solid waste refuse. And this year, Zero Waste Marin gave all of their all of their member agencies a micro grant, $2,000. So not a ton of money in the large scheme of things, but significant enough for me to want to report out. And Larkspur is using it for, here, I'll start my video. Larkspur is using it to purchase fiber compostable foodware items. So some of you may already know this. I didn't know this until fairly recently, that not everything that is compostable is equally compostable. So oftentimes compostable just means that it's not made of petrochemicals and will not last for 2,000 years, but may last for quite a while. Fiber compostable has a pretty decent breakdown rate once it's either put in the compost ideally, or even if it just goes to the landfill. So Larkspur is stocking up and buying lots of this. So all of any staff events for the foreseeable future will be completely stocked with these materials. And we're also going to be using them for the foreseeable future at any events that we run as a city, music in the parks, etc., so that we're trying to eliminate single-use plastics, petrochemicals, etc., as much from our use as feasible. So that's my quick update. If there are any questions from folks, I can move on to the Marin Climate and Energy Partnership update.
Quick question on that, Shannon.
Yeah.
I should probably know this, so forgive me, but are there any like ordinances in place for Larkspur? I know Sausalito has one for all like city restaurants to be required to transition to non-single-use plastic by, I think, 2026 or something. Is there an equivalent for that here in Larkspur for vendors and restaurants?
So a while ago, I could look it up, the date's escaping me right now. All of the jurisdictions in Marin and the county of Marin did what was at the time called a single-use foodware ordinance ban or something along those lines. And all of us adopted it. There was a model ordinance from the county. So David Muller mentioned earlier that the county had a model ordinance for electrification some years back. On some of these climate items where it makes sense to have consistency across the region, there can be a model ordinance, and cities and towns can opt in or opt out. In this case, we all opted in, and the county had the stipulation that they were happy to be the enforcers of this and audit and educate restaurants in town if we all adopted exactly the same thing, so that they did not have to go around the county and have bespoke ordinances where things were slightly different. It leads to a lot of confusion. So Larkspur adopted that. Was that 2017, Dan? It might have been. It's not that far back, was it?
And in one caveat,
Probably 2022.
Port of Madera did not adopt a model ordinance.
Oh, did they not?
They adopted their own ordinance, and as a result, they have to enforce their own ordinance. So if you, as many of us do, eat in Port of Madera, you may see the rules are being applied differently there. That was a conscious decision by town council.
Okay. And then if they're all meant to, fall in line with this ordinance by, I think it's 2026.
I believe that's correct.
And
yes.
that means that enforcement doesn't start until then, correct?
Correct. And my understanding is the county wants to try education, not enforcement. So we'll see.
Something to be aware of.
They've come a long way. It was May 2022.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. All right, Shannon, I'm going to let you move through your update from Marin Climate and Energy Partnership. And then also with the greenhouse gas update.
Right. So 2 items here was the suggestion and request of folks at the Climate Action Forum that there'd be a standing item for staff to report out on meetings of the Marin Climate and Energy Partnership. That's another joint powers authority, or that's another agency that operates under a larger joint powers authority in Marin that all cities and the county participates into. That is a staff only meeting. So it's not broadcast or publicized. It's really a working group for sustainability professionals in the region to talk about any shared efforts, how things are going, and kind of share lessons learned, what's working, what's not working, and what next steps and opportunities for collaboration might be in the future. So the last meeting was on August 5th, so last week, and there were two notable items there. We received a presentation from the Transportation Authority of Marin, who handles a lot of our regional transportation planning. They've been undergoing a more than year-long process to release a VMT toolkit, which for folks who don't know what VMT is, that is vehicle miles traveled, which is a metric in the transportation planning world, which basically means how do we get cars to drive less and other automobiles to drive less? How do we get folks out of, small automobiles and either shorten the trips or significantly move to public transportation, pedestrian transportation, biking, etc. So we got the very high level of this effort, but as folks know, it's a very car dependent region. There's a lot of challenges to get folks to be able to switch to other forms of transportation or lower their vehicle miles traveled. It's pretty exciting that this was developed, and there's more to come on that. So this was the kind of first overview that we got from the TAM staff. We also received a presentation from the Bay Area Regional Energy Network. It's referred to as BayREN, which is a regional government collaborative that serves all of the Bay Area's 9 counties with training, outreach, technical assistance, and funding and resources to help make the Bay Area more energy efficient, with a focus on reducing emissions, resiliency, and equity. So we also received an overview from their staff at the last meeting. And unless folks have any questions, some of the MCEP meetings are really heavy on action items and collaboration. And other times we hear from our partner agencies where all of us are busy folks and working on a number of things, and we really all get to hear information from what our counterparts and other government entities are doing.
You have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, did you say that was the April meeting? There wasn't a May meeting? The date of the MCEP meeting?
The meeting I reported out on was the last one, which was the August meeting.
August.
August is a long time ago, Shannon.
I'm sorry, not August, you guys. I'm on East Coast time, so I'm also in a different month. It is the June meeting, the June 5th. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I'm looking at like 3 different spreadsheets here. No, it was the June meeting. I didn't report on a meeting that happened a year ago.
This week, right? Wasn't it Tuesday?
June 5th,
Yep.
I think she did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
June 5th.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and Shannon, this is David. I have a question and also a comment about the MCEP meeting. Was there any discussion on that about what jurisdictions are doing in terms of their preparation for adopting the 2025 code cycle? I know that's been on the agenda a little. Was there any update on that?
There wasn't an update or significant update on the 2025 code cycle and where the 2025 code cycle will be at the last meeting.
Okay, and the other thing was a possible topic for MCEP in another community-based group that a couple of us are in, a county-wide group. We started talking the other day about what the status is of the EV fleet policies that all jurisdictions are required to develop. And there were different times frames for when they were to be developed based, I think, on population. And there were a couple of Marin jurisdictions, maybe San Rafael and Novato, and maybe the county, that were supposed to have done this already, develop EV fleet policy. It doesn't mean to convert your fleet to EVs, but to have a policy to how to do that over time. And we all kind of looked at each other and realized we had lost track of that. We didn't really know where that stood countywide. And we just thought it might be a subject to bring up at MCEP and see how the jurisdictions are doing on that.
No, is this some funding for that?
Oh, yeah, and there was an angle on it too. There was some state funding available to jurisdictions to develop the policy. I think it was.
Technical assistance, it's a MTC.
Yep.
And several Marin jurisdictions successfully got that funding. So it would seem that between getting the funding and having some state mandate to develop these, that it's sitting out there. None of us really knew what the status was, and it would seem like MCEP would be a perfect place to bring that up. How's everyone doing on that? And to find out. And maybe again, collaborate and moving stuff forward.
Good suggestion.
Okay,
Does anybody know anything about that? More about that one?
the MCT grant, is that what you're asking about, or
For Larkspur, for fleet? funding,
Developing the fleet
Policy.
electrification policy.
for Larkspur?
Well, I'm,
It was like $1
Larkspur
million.
would be one of the jurisdictions, but
It's 100,000.
But I'm just saying countywide, all the jurisdictions.
I think
There was,
we chose not to apply. We have a fleet of 10 vehicles.
Right.
It didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
To apply for
Yeah.
a grant to write a policy,
for
we've
10
already-
vehicles.
4 of which are electric
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Right, so we need to electrify 6 more trucks. Our policy, which we can write up, is we usually drive the trucks on the ground, but if the council wants to fund replacing the trucks that we have, we can do that.
And these are, when we say fleet, we're talking about like city-owned vehicles.
Yes.
Mhm.
That.
Exactly.
Like what?
Our fleet is mostly pickup trucks for maintenance workers to drive around. And
Got it.
we've got a small dump truck that can't be replaced yet. It's not a replacement. We've got a digger. I mean, our fleet is really small. So
And you said 4 REV?
we have 4 EVs now.
I think those are cars.
Oh, yeah,
She said pickup trucks, I think they're cars.
No, we own 2 pickup trucks. We purchased them last year. And they are in our fleet now.
Yeah, Katie, just for reference, the fleet turnover, there are cities who run their own bus systems. Some cities do their own, like have basically trash trucks, right? They do their own solid waste, refuse and recycling. And then if you have fire and police, you have a lot more vehicles in your, and any kind of wastewater, you just have a lot more vehicles in your fleet. And then when you have a larger population, a lot of times that correlates to
And
larger.
larger jurisdictions have much bigger fleets generally.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
So the technical assistance, I know a couple folks at cities who receive those grants. They have hundreds of vehicles, right, including some very heavy duty vehicles, where the push for electrification and to get things, to get those kinds of vehicles ready and to take the use that a city vehicle would take all day, almost every day, versus something that would be a personal vehicle can be much more of an effort than our fleet. So
I would only add, because we are a member of Central Marin Police, Larkspur, Corte Madera, and San Anselmo have been concentrating our resources on electrifying Central Marin Police. So all but one of the patrol vehicles is now electric. The entire command staff drives either electric, or maybe one of them still drives a plug-in hybrid. And then the watch commanders will soon be driving in trucks that have been modified for police duty. We're the only jurisdiction in Marin that owns 2 police patrol vehicles, but we can't put them on the street because the tariffs and other issues with the supply chain. We can't get the kits to actually have lights and sirens on them. We have the cars, but we can't actually roll them out and patrol them. Yeah. So they're sitting over in the yard collecting dust. It's really frustrating. So, because we were hoping to get those out there, but even our community service officers are in EVs now.
So you're just waiting for the supply chain delays to.
As soon as we can, we place the order, and as soon as our vendor can build but we made sure we were actually one of the first in line to buy. It's the first police patrol vehicle that's actually sanctioned as a true pursuit vehicle. It's basically the Chevy Blazer, but it's been modified. It still says it's a Blazer, but it's a little different than the one you could go buy.
We hope to see it out there someday.
Yeah, well, if you're walking by and you see a black Chevy Blazer just sitting in the yard, that's why it's sitting there.
okay. Shannon, do you want to report out on the greenhouse gas inventory report, 2023, that was provided by Christina Rourke?
yes, so
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna say to everybody here, I asked our city clerk to print some out, so I had her print out about a half dozen, if anybody wants to grab a printed copy, I believe they're on the backs.
Here, I think. Thank you.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
So at the last regular meeting of the city council, we had a presentation by Christine O'Rourke, who is the sustainability staffer for Marin for MCEP, and one of her primary duties at staffing Marin Climate and Energy Partnership is that we all share a resource to create our GHG inventories or greenhouse gas inventories. So all of Marin shares the same modeling, uses the same person, which is great. So when we look at Corte Madeira's GHG emissions versus our emissions versus San Anselmo's emissions, all of the same assumptions are made in the same model. This is a 2023 report. There's a bit of a lag on when we get our GHG inventories because some of the data is provided by at the state level or at the regional level in terms of regional car usage. If you're in a jurisdiction that has a lot of agriculture, there's ag stats that you receive. So it's a couple years behind. We know that. It's just how it works for when we can get the data. This is not my PowerPoint, but I am sharing with permission. This is what Christina represented at the last city council meeting for folks who are interested. It seems like there are a number of copies in the room of the report in full, but it provides a very high level Cliff Notes overview of where our emissions are coming from. So the majority, built environment, natural gas, and transportation. Not a lot of surprises here for CAF members. At previous CAF meetings, we identified that building electrification and low carbon transportation are two areas of Larkspur's climate action plan that we really want to focus on. There's a reason for that. This is where our emissions are coming from. Our emissions are down 25% since 1990. This graph looks very encouraging and we have a lot to be proud of. If we continue at the current rate, we should be on track for the goals that are set for 2030. Certainly 2045 will be a heavier lift. I always add this caveat when we present these numbers. Again, there's a lot to be proud of here and there's a lot of progress. The climate change picture globally is not a good one. We are still emitting way too many greenhouse gases to get anywhere near our climate goals for limiting global warming to as little for Celsius degrees for pre-industrial levels. The big highlights are that there's been a lot of progress on electricity. Going electric is a good thing. There's also been progress on transportation emissions. A lot of that is due to better fuel efficiency and more zero emission vehicles. And also waste emissions are down due to lower organic content in the landfill. So this is what was presented to the city council. There's a lot more. There's a lot more in the actual report, as well as the numbers that we can use for a lot of the action items in our climate action plan to see what kind of progress we're making. I'm happy to, if there's anybody in the room who has any questions, I'm happy to answer those as best I can.
Mine isn't so much a question as a comment. So one of the things that sort of jumps out at me from this report is, well, the big trend going back to 2005 is very favorable. I think it's, I'm sure Christine reported this out, that a lot of that had to do with the development of Marin Clean Energy, MCE. And the thing that concerns me particularly is that the last 3 years reported 21, 22, 23 are almost flat.
Mm-hmm.
And so while the big picture looks great, the the trajectory we're on right now, and we don't know 24 and we're in 25 now, if it remains flat, we've got a problem. And a lot of the big reductions that have already happened are not gonna be replicated. And I remember at the first, well, it was during the development of the climate action plan. One of the key messages was, while the city and its functions can reduce greenhouse gas emissions further and has continued to, that the really big reductions going forward, even a few years ago, were gonna have to be changes made by the residents
Absolutely.
of the city. It wasn't gonna be the city buying a couple of electric vehicles, so that's great stuff, I mean, I'm not, but
Yeah,
it needs to
passenger
be
vehicles.
like,
Yeah.
you know, a few thousand residents buying
Yes.
electric vehicles. So it's just something to think about, I think, when we look at the inventory report, is, you know, how's that look over the last couple of years? And that's part of what we need to do, and the council and staff needs to do, is how can we change that flat?
Yeah.
That flat trajectory and to back into it downward. And of course, that's why we have a climate action plan to try and do that, but it's really gonna take, I think, community engagement rather than, you know, people saying to, you know, staff and the council, do something, you know, it's, we have to do it. So a lot of it's gonna be around communication
Mhm.
out to the community. So it's just worth noting on this inventory.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that. I was hoping to make a similar comment, so thank you. And I'm new to forums like this, so hopefully you'll all keep me honest on what's in scope and what's not, but in that spirit, I think, you know, as and when we dig into the priority items on the dashboard, which I know we'll hope to cover later today, I'm trying to keep an eye on the things that, yes, of course, we get foundational city support, things like ordinances and mandates and education, but I'm always trying to listen and look with an eye of what is it the community's responsibility to do, you know, in addition or on our own, and how can those two things come together? So again, like, I know the beauty of this forum is getting the support from
Mhm.
the city,
Right.
Mhm.
but I couldn't agree with you more. City can do everything right.
Right.
And it still is individual responsibility, and that's why this side of the table, so to speak, has a lot more work to do.
And that is why having supportive policies, like for adopting those two model reach codes helps, because you know, you can lure people along to do stuff, you can push them along to do stuff, and you really need both.
Yes.
I mean, the reality is you need both.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, to that point.
Agreed. And I do think, you know, a big part, and just to reiterate what you're saying, David, is that it's going to be about communications and education. And on that note, you know, one of the items that we brought was one of the action items that was brought out of the last meeting, David and I talked about this earlier, was creating a climate corner newsletter, as part of the city manager's newsletter, and that goes out weekly. And I think we have a pretty good subscription rate with Shannon. Is it about 5,000 people that it goes out to, or the mailing list is
Just
5,000?
over 5,000 folks.
Okay, so that's great, but we have 12,000 people in Larkspur. So how do we get these people? Because there's no way to, you know, it's self-service, right? They have to come to our website to sign up for the city manager's newsletter. So, you know, we need everybody who's on any platform, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, you know, to be talking about this work that we're doing, sharing with your networks. Hopefully you have lots of people who are in this community that will be looking at your feeds, and giving them information about what we're doing, encouraging them to sign up for the city manager's newsletter, encouraging them to come to the climate page. We now have a climate page on our website. So yeah, we have a lot of work to do, but it's sort of us in ripple effect, talking to our neighbors and our friends in the community and asking them to share the good word too, right?
Yeah. Now I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so I'll try to keep it short, but some, like, an idea. I know we've talked a lot about, things like listing things like our dashboard and our priority actions on the /climate website. And certainly don't want to enroll anyone here in any unnecessary work, but just by way of example, if I'm an average citizen, I'm not in CAF, I find my way to cityoflarkspur.org/climate, I see a bunch of links. Then I have to look through the links and I have to figure out what all the dashboards mean. And then only after I figure out what all the dashboards mean, do I figure out, okay, I'm many steps away from buy an EV, do this, do that. And so I know there are lots of great programs like Resilient Neighborhoods and others that do this really well, but it's a good reminder that for us in CAF, like helping people get to the so what a lot faster than having to follow every single step. That's what we'll do here.
Yeah,
But for the average person that we know, just getting straight to the most high impact actions they can take is so important.
right, right. Okay, so that we are gonna talk about the dashboard, and so let's get moving on our next.
Are we gonna touch on the climate corner? Cause it did get in there. I assume everyone has seen that.
Yeah,
There's now a climate corner in the city manager's report, and it has a lot of content. And you know, that's great.
Yeah.
Really nice job on that. I had one other thought when you were talking about that, Katie, is something not to forget is one of the first pages of the climate action plan is a 1-page sheet called What You Can Do.
It
And
rocks.
under each of the subject areas,
Mhm.
and we basically stole that from Fairfax.
This is the reason why I like
We
them
did.
here.
We did.
It's so helpful.
But that 1-pager, and Shannon, I guess I'm directing this to you, is that might be something to repeatedly put in the climate corner.
Love
Just wondering what you can do, and it goes right to that page,
It's
just
so
the one
helpful.
page. So you're not looking through the whole climate action plan, just the 1 page.
Mhm.
But it's
Totally agree with that.
it's really good. We tweaked it a bit. No, we took that from Fairfax. Good job, Jody.
Yeah. It's very like,
I thought they were in every cap though. I think.
They are now, because we said, oh, this is great, everyone should do it, but no, Fairfax did that first, we did it second.
I do remember working on it, but I thought it was off of Christine's. Anyway.
big fan,
Thank you.
big fan.
Okay, so I'll put that as an action item to add that 1-pager to the climate corner. I think everybody would agree that that's useful and a good way to, in summary, give people some, you know, high-level overviews of what they can do today to get into action. Okay, so we are gonna move on to an adoption of the minutes from the last meeting. I don't know if everybody had an opportunity to read them, and I'm not sure how formal we have to be in this process. I'm gonna look to my city manager on that one.
This is, you only have an agenda and minutes
Okay,
to help you.
okay,
You're not a
Yeah.
Brown Act committee, so you technically don't even have to adopt the minutes, but. you
Okay.
want to. Or at least
Reasonable though to ask, does anyone who reviewed them have any
Sure,
comments?
sure, I was just,
Yep.
I think the reason we picked this format and you
Yeah,
were there
yeah.
was so you could be more
Casual,
liberated from the constraints of government to talk to each other,
we love that.
so.
okay. Does anybody have any comments or questions or any additions to the minutes?
I reviewed them and I thought they were great,
Okay,
thank you.
thank
for
you.
developing them.
Thank you for reviewing them.
Yeah, hey, actually, there's one thing, that you and I talked about this, Sarah,
Mhm.
is, I think it would be helpful in the minutes to have a list, an itemized list of actions that come out of the meeting.
Okay.
Just a real brief,
Okay.
like we just did one, you
Mhm.
know, put the first page of the cap in the climate, corner in the newsletter periodically. That's an action item. You know, so we might all remember that, but we might forget. So I just think it'd be good on the minutes to have a short list of action items.
Are the minutes?
There was a short list in there, just FYI. I believe there
Oh,
was a
okay.
short list, yeah.
Great.
But they were all action items for Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon.
Good job, Shannon.
Sorry, Laura, what were you saying?
I didn't mean to interrupt. Are the minutes from the Climate Action Forum gatherings posted on the city's website?
On the climate page. specifically. Mhm.
And on the agendas and minutes page,
Oh,
we put
sorry.
them there too,
Yes, okay, thank you.
because we thought some people might instinctively go there looking for them.
It's really helpful if you miss a meeting, that's where I went. I didn't go on the site, I looked at the agenda for today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Bring everyone up to speed. Who wants to be up to speed?
Thanks, Laura. Okay, so the next item we had on the agenda was to adopt the mission statement. And from our last meeting, there was really only one addition to the mission statement, and that was to add the word goal in the last, it's a very long sentence, so I can read it to you, but it's the mission statement for this group is to provide a structured platform for community engagement and priority setting on Larkspur's climate and sustainability initiatives. The forum will receive Climate Action Plan 2030 progress updates and provide input on implementation of Larkspur's climate-related programs and goals focused on achieving the implementation of the Climate Action Plan 2030 goal to reduce GHG emissions by 40% below 1990 levels. So, does anybody have any questions or comments about the adoption of that mission statement or additions? All right, great. So that will get posted officially on the website then. Okay, so now we get to move into our city manager's role here today, or apart from running the AV. He was going to talk to us about some very good news, which is that this climate has been given a line item in our budget. So I'll let Dan talk about how we're budgeting for climate.
So for the last decade or so, the city has spent quite a bit of money on climate actions, but we've done it within our public works budget. So I think with Councilmember Margulies coming on board, with folks like David speaking, we started to pick up on people aren't seeing these expenditures because they're buried in the public works budget. So this year, we've created a capital improvement project fund for climate activities. These are distinct from some of the things you're talking about here that Shannon and I will fund through the city manager's budget. These are expenditures, whether they come out of recommendations as forum or actions of the council, or they come from staff, they're going to result in some sort of physical change to the city's infrastructure or asset pool. That's what a capital improvement project is for. As I said, in the past, those have just been spent out of a general account that we have in public works, but we've moved it in there so people can just find it really easily and see these expenditures. And then when you do that type of accounting, you have to seed the accounts. So the council's authorized 50,000 to sit there. And again, that may not sound like a lot, but it is for these types of projects, because 50,000, we're talking about the sort of smaller scale things that we might do that we could identify as being climate oriented. You know, there will still be a lot going on that's outside of this. Right now, we're actually almost all our climate related activity and investment is in the library project. So you have to be following that project to see all the work that's being done there. The council is going to be looking at some investment in Piper Park, and that would include increasing the EV charging and maybe making it so the EV chargers stop tripping the breakers out there. So those of you who try to use them, they sometimes don't work right. And this turns out it's because of inadequate electricity. So that's the type of thing that's going to be done with the account. We just think it'll be easier for everyone to understand what we're doing going forward. So I think it's a good start. And I think knowing there's a pot of money set aside, that's another thing. That's not budget. That's not wishing 50,000. That's $50,000 of cash is in that account. So it's 50,000 that you know is there to be spent on this purpose. So, that's pretty much it for that account.
Thanks, Dan. Does anybody have any questions?
I just want to say that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's good. That is awesome.
You know,
That
it
helps every city to know that that cities are starting to put money really into funds.
It's
Set aside.
awesome.
It's very awesome.
You know, and I'm just gonna bring up an example of the kind of thing that would be very useful for. I remember, I think it was about 2 years ago now, there was, I think, Ride and Drive Clean was sponsoring a big EV car show here in the county.
Mhm.
And they were looking for all the jurisdictions to kick in a few $1,000 to have countywide campaign,
Mhm.
publication, campaign
Mhm.
so there'd be countywide awareness of this. And it was really hard for jurisdictions to find it. That would be maybe, the kind of thing, I don't know if that would qualify as a capital, but the idea of having some sort of resource available when stuff comes up or
Yeah.
stuff gets identified is really, really great.
This is a comment for Shannon. I'm thinking that Jody's comment about, the Larkspur is making a line item for climate is a beneficial comment for other jurisdictions. And I wonder, Shannon, if you could take that to MCEP and, promote that idea and encourage other jurisdictions to do that also.
Might be better if I could make a alternate that Shannon take it to the Marine Managers Association.
Yeah.
MCP is awesome, but Shannon is the highest ranking person in the room in terms of her position in her organization. And a lot of those folks, there'd be a lot of pressure for them to ask the city manager and the finance director to reconfigure the
I'll
books.
redirect my comment to you.
Well, Shannon's a member of the Marine Manager Association too, so she can take it there and she'll be able to articulate it better than me, but anyway, I just,
It's a good
if you
idea.
haven't been to, if you haven't ever seen the list of who goes to MCP, they're all over their organizations. They're people who have been assigned because they have a focus or an interest in the topics there. And some of them are pretty high up, like Shannon, and some of them are more in the middle of the organization.
Great.
MCEP, the group is aware about, I have shared about the Climate Action Forum and some of the changes to our budget and priorities as part of, we have a roundtable at the end of every meeting with regional updates. So folks know I haven't given a full presentation or anything of that nature, but they know.
Yeah. Just echoing again, really exciting to have this set aside. What would the process be like for very interested parties like ourselves to stay tuned on where that's being spent? And is this group sort of expected to provide input on where we see some of those funds being best allocated? Can you talk more about the process for it?
Yeah, so and I'll roll back. One of the interesting piece of feedback that I got from our community development director, Elise Simonian, is that in her time in San Anselmo, when she was leading a lot of their climate efforts, one of the challenges is a group like this or staff members come up with an idea, and then the public works director, who's the one who actually has to figure out how to make it happen, doesn't have money. So this is also partly for us internally to know that there's money. But to get to your question, Shannon's going to be your liaison, as is Councilmember Margulies, right? So they're going to hear your discussion and help you turn it into something that can be taken to the council for a discussion. Depending on the nature of what it is, it might be as simple as Shannon brings it to the management meeting or our internal meeting, and we'll all talk about how it fits what we're trying to accomplish. It's hard to say until I know what the specifics are, but they're your conduit to get quickly to the people who can make decisions.
Great. Thank you.
I have a quick
Yeah.
question on how you came up with the $50,000. Was that approximately what was spent out of the DPW budget last year in 2024? Or how did you come up with 50?
Sometimes I just pick round numbers. I just pick 50. It's a good starting number for an effort like this. We actually do this for ADA. We do this for small investment bike and ped, bike and pedestrian investment. And 50 is a common seed number for us. And it doesn't, when it's gone, the council could say, let's put more money in. Or we could come and say we have an awesome project to do, but we need 25 more. So it's just a good starting number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, so here's where we're gonna move on to the meat of our business. And we're going to have Shannon online bring up the revised draft climate action plan implementation dashboard. That's a mouthful. But we have been working in the background, and I want to really give a public shout out to our community member, Katie, who is a whiz when it comes to building Google Sheets. And she has spent a good amount of time building out a really beautiful dashboard. The first page, the summary page, there's tabs, as you can see down on the bottom, is the real quick overview to provide a visual of where we're at, in addition to a counter table, which I'll let Katie describe, because it was my first introduction to a counter table. Katie, if you want to give a quick.
Yeah, well, actually, this was inspired by something I saw in one of your public comments, David. So I'll bring the shout out back around here. So the idea here is really simple. Like, we know we have a dashboard. We talked about that last meeting. And wouldn't it be nice if, when we're tracking things line by line and we're making sure we know their status line by line, it just automatically does the calculation of what percentage of each of our actions is in what status. So quite simply, if you follow me on this top table, what I'm trying to identify is, okay, on the leftmost column, we know that we have certain target years for our actions, right? We have short-term, mid-term, long-term. I've translated that to years just for ease. The things we wanted to get done by 2023, wanted to be done by 2025, 2030 versus ongoing. So within each of those, we have a handful of actions, of course. And this just gives us a nice snapshot to say, okay, let's take a look at all the things we wanted to do in 2023. What's the status of those? Well, according to this, unknown is my own category, which is I don't know what the status is. So someone help me figure out what the status is. But generally speaking, 19% of those are not on track. 15% need some more support, 41% on track, and 22 completed. So think of this as just like our finger on the pulse of where are we with these actions. Now, I hope that we can make this even more useful when we layer on priority items. So this is completely up to this shared group to figure out what's the best way to represent this information. Maybe we don't care about the year, we just care about the priority. We only want to look at the high priority items, what percentage of those are complete. So we can maneuver this however we'd like, but was just trying to give us an easy way to get that holistic sense of status. So this top table, I'll end here by saying the top table is just the low carbon transportation and renewable energy electrification items, because we know those are the ones we care the most about for now. The second table looks at the entire climate action plan. So those two top focus areas and all the other actions recommended in the plan.
Thanks, Katie. So if we move to the second tab, Shannon has worked with, so the second tab takes all of the actions for the low carbon transportation and the renewable energy and electrification, the two categories we've identified as where we want to focus our time and energy, because we believe we can make, the biggest dent there, and they are our biggest culprits in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. So Shannon has asked staff to complete, we can't see it, unfortunately, Shannon. Can you close the participant window, Dan?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. So, after much discussion, there is a hidden, column, Katie, right?
Yeah.
And so it is the column that suggests the priority level based on the previous version of the dashboard. But we decided, how do we define priority? We discussed, we haven't come to an agreement and a consensus among the group on how to identify priority. And we wanted to ask our community to help us prioritize this community action plan. So we thought, okay, we need to give them some way to get their arms around what should be prioritized. So in our efforts to do that, we had Katie, Shannon, and I had some conversations, and we put together a matrix, and we'll talk about the matrix a little bit after, but it's just a 4-quadrant, which goes from low effort to high effort, and low impact to high impact. And then Shannon, what she did was work with all the department heads to identify these actions as level of impact and level of effort. So those are columns, I don't even.
J and K. those
Okay, J
last
and
two
K.
columns.
Can everybody see this screen okay?
No.
Not
very
so
clear.
well. Okay, so they're on the right-hand side and they're color coordinated right now. You see red and green. And so Shannon went through and had staff help her identify the effort level and the impact level based on their, as staff, how they felt, you know, this would be high effort and high impact, or low effort and low impact. So Shannon was gonna just talk a little bit about how they categorize those. Shannon, you're gonna go through a couple and just give some context for how staff came to those categorizations or qualifications.
Yes, so I'm just going to draw on a few examples because there's many rows there of some of the ways that staff made these determinations. So when the climate action plans were authored, they weren't necessarily set up to use the high impact, low impact, to use this kind of criteria. It's great that they're using it now, but the language, we're using the language that was created by Christina Rourke years ago before there was a climate action forum. So the only thing that we evaluated were areas of priority. So when we say that it's low effort, low impact, etc., this is already in a part of the climate action plan that we've deemed has inherent value or an inherent, some inherent impact there. So there is internal language within the climate action plan that will use different nomenclature or terminology and say, pursue an ordinance. So pursuing an ordinance for some ordinances can be very high effort for staff. It doesn't mean it's not worth it, but there can be political considerations. There's a process you have to go through. You have to clear it with legal. That's a lot of work. It can be very high impact. And not all ordinances are the same. So one of the examples is to pass basically an enhanced leaf blower ordinance to require electrification or pursue electrification. Staff deemed that that was fairly low effort because it's very straightforward. There are other ordinances that the CAP recommends that changes our land use. That's very high effort. It's high effort to engage the community. There are a lot of stakeholders. You have to be consistent with state law and other regulations, and it requires just a lot more technical assistance and buy-in. Additionally, we talked earlier in this meeting about how important communication is. And outreach to the community, especially asking members of Larkspur's residents, businesses, etc., to be inspired to do climate action and not just have the city pursue their own climate action goals that we can control. There are a few examples in here where staff said that things were low effort if it said things like promote walking and multimodal transportation. It doesn't mean that we think that multimodal transportation is not high impact or important, but we put it as low impact because if we put something out in the newsletter, that's all it says is promote. We don't know how many people would change to multimodal transportation based on promotion only. So in order for these quadrants to have use in terms of what we'd want to prioritize or what would have the most impact, you may see things that say low impact, even if it's determined to be fairly important as an overall goal. Do you want to add anything, Sarah, or does that?
No, I thought we maybe would just look at, potentially look at a row or two and just sort of, you know.
I can pull up a
color.
slide. I can pull up an example slide of some of these and screen
Okay.
share. I have a few
That
examples.
would be great. For me,
I know we're having issues with being able to see the full spreadsheet at size. So this is just, let me start my one-page PowerPoint. So, sorry. So understanding staff calculation. An example of this is to encourage walking as an alternative, establish and maintain a system of pedestrian facilities that are consistent with the city's general plan and bicycle plan and pedestrian master plan. We put this as high impact, high effort because this could be a very big regional project. There's one here that's target policies to support zero waste emission vehicle adoption, including used vehicles, low income and disadvantaged communities. there's the policy language here, and we have this as high impact and high effort because there's a lot going on. This includes used vehicles, this includes low income and disadvantaged communities. Generally, staff has not adopted these policies previously at a city level. So we have that as it could be very high impact, but it's also high effort. There's another low carbon transportation item here that says support regional efforts to establish bike or a scooter share program. We participate in that. We had this as low impact and low effort, not because it's not worthy or it's not important, but because all staff is doing here is supporting regional efforts. We're not taking the lead. And it's a bike share and scooter program, which the effort could be low impact depending on what the usage or the buy-in is. Currently in Marin County, these are in a version of a pilot project mode or pretty limited in scope. So that was the thinking behind behind some of these evaluations we made.
Okay, Shannon, will you please bring back up the dashboard?
Yes.
So not sure, number one, David, were you ever able to download the Excel? Because we did put it up there on Excel.
Yeah,
Okay.
Today, I went in and by clicking on the links in the agenda, I was able to download all of them.
Oh, fantastic.
When I say download, I was able to view them online. I didn't actually try and save them. But
Okay.
I viewed them as they popped up, yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, because we originally put it up as a link for a Google Sheet.
That was in there as well.
And were
So
you
it
able
came
to
up
access
both-
that?
Yeah, the
Oh.
Google Sheet came up and Excel.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. We had thought when you first weren't able to access it, you had sent us a message that
On the
perhaps,
draft last week, yeah.
yeah, we thought maybe it had something to do with Google, because sometimes Google will require you to have a Gmail account.
No,
That
I
was
had
the
no
problem.
I had no
Okay.
problem with it, and so it was just on the draft agenda, they weren't live, on the final agenda, they were live. That-
Excellent. Anybody else
That was my.
have
I
any,
saw them.
you were able to look at them
Yeah.
also?
It's a little overwhelming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of
It's
stuff.
a lot. It's a lot.
There is a lot, there is a lot. Although I will say on the second tab, the action tracker for transportation and renewable energy, there are, I believe, only 54 items. And that's the one we want to stay focused on, because that's where we've identified we can have the biggest impact and where we need, where we know our culprits, our biggest culprits are. So what we wanted to do was, we of course, like, this goal and the mission of this CAF is to get community input on what should we prioritize. So as I was mentioning, we wanted to give a framework for our community members to understand how to prioritize. And so in doing so, we identified level of impact and level of effort from city staff. And we just mentioned how we went through that. So now what we want to do is share this information potentially in just a quadrant based. It would be really ideal if we could create a quadrant and then have each of these items in the quadrant with a link to a description of what each of those items are, where they fall in the quadrant. But if you think about it, the quadrant would be set up in a way where the top left of the quadrant would be low effort, low impact, right? So that would be like, or maybe it's the bottom, all right? Let's just say it's low effort, low impact, high impact. So low effort, low impact would be the bottom left of the quadrant. That would be like the low hanging fruit, the thing that's easiest to get done. High effort, I really need a quadrant to look at.
It's basically one of these,
You
right?
have the quadrant and.
We all can see this. It's
No, I
basically-
don't.
I'm sharing, so the
Right.
quadrant is on the screen now.
Perfect.
Or a
Thank
version of
you
it.
so much, Shannon. Thank
We all
you.
know these.
So the bottom left corner is the low hanging fruit. The top left is, aspirational, and then, no, the top right would be aspirational, high impact, high effort, and the bottom right is, we don't even go near that. It doesn't make sense
Yeah,
to
why would
even.
we do a low impact, high effort?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what we were thinking was that we would want to create a survey and send it out to the community and ask them to prioritize based on this simple quadrant. what, because we think, you know, if we get our community involved and they say, well, I could do this and I could tell people about this, that would be a way to have them identify the top 5 priorities, but give them some framework to know, like, don't choose anything down in that bottom right quadrant, because that's out of our, you know, that's really not doable at this point in time. Choose something in likely the 2 left quadrants, and then tell us your top 5 priorities. And so we would put it out in a Survey Monkey, and we would try to then identify through this survey to the general public, what is the public telling us? You know, we're seeing, you know, the most people say they want to do this one thing, or, is it making sense? I could use some
Yeah.
support from my team members.
Yeah, monthly.
No, right now, just the start, and to identify.
The product's called Survey Monkey. It's the delivery system.
Did I say monkey? I don't know why I've been doing that, sorry. Yes, I have, I've been having an affectation when I say monkey, I don't know why. I was doing it with them, so yeah, so to identify, you know, top 5 priorities, and then be that what we discuss, okay, how are we gonna implement this? How are we gonna get to work and have some action? So this was sort of the laying the foundation to help us get to a place of how do we identify our
Right.
priorities?
Sounds like a great idea, and just the Survey Monkey itself, I think, is a really good first educational step. You know, if
Yes.
my neighbor opens this up and looks at it, he or she says, oh, well, that one's easy, I can do that.
Yes.
And they probably, there's a fair chance they do, because they do care.
Yeah,
And that's, I think, just as a quadrant nerd myself, I think this thing is, it takes us from a long list of 56 items that you open up and you go, oh my God, I mean, I was working on it and it blinded me, right? To a subset where you understand exactly what
I
it would
can do
take.
that.
Yeah, yes, I think the best case scenario is people start raising their hand. And that I think gives people an access point where they don't have to guess how much effort it would take. I think that was a piece that was really hard before. It's like before city staff could explain how much effort things take, we would have to guess. And so now we have better data to be working from so people can engage.
yeah.
Great.
Uh,
That's great.
So I'm wondering, you know, there's different sources of more detail on these actions, so,
Mhm.
you know, like what is actually involved in that, and Resilient Neighborhoods has kind of a library of information. Green Change also has a lot of things online, a lot of tips, a lot of examples, little videos, little descriptions and so forth. So, you know, look at those as just 2 local examples.
What was the second one you mentioned?
Just,
Green change?
Green Change.
Green change, thank you.
.net.
Thumbs on the board.
Oh, fantastic.
Fantastic, well, very good. Thank you. I think that's really smart, because if this is the thing, the information's already there. They
Yeah,
just need to
yeah.
connect it when
Yeah,
they're reviewing.
and, you know, we've actually found great little videos.
They're very engaging videos.
Amazing. And just to clarify one thing about the goal of the Survey Monkey. And I guess we could figure out exactly how we want to do it, but ideally, people would sort of make their selections. And say, this is the handful of ones that I am particularly interested in and want to see prioritized.
Mhm.
So in theory, we would have their information, their selections, and then we can bring them into the fold. Like, then we kind of have their
Mhm.
go ahead
You
to
can harvest them.
kind of, yeah,
What
right?
Attempt to.
opportunity we have for you.
Yes.
So a couple of thoughts on this. So I did look through all this. The quadrant was great. Use the kind of approach. It's a wonderful way to help identify what you don't want to spend your time on and what you really want to spend your time, you know, the high value, low effort. So that sounds good. There were 2 things about use of the quadrant that I just wanted to check on. One, and Shannon, this was when you were walking through it. You noted that some of the items, some of the actions, maybe ended up being identified by staff as low impact because somebody else outside of staff was handling it, as just as an example. Or maybe
Right.
it was low effort because somebody was outside. But
Low effort, yep.
But I just, it struck me that on some of these staff could have a different perspective than the general public might have. You know, not, if the general public didn't realize that somebody else had this, and so Larkspur spending its effort on it is gonna have low impact because somebody else, you know, already has it. It may still be that that item has big impact on Larkspur achieving its climate goals, even though Larkspur isn't gonna have much impact on its particular effort. See what I'm
You
saying?
meaning like getting people to bike to work or?
Exactly, that would be a good one.
Mhm.
There was another one, it was, I think you gave an example of promote something. And at least as I heard it and interpreted it, was like, well, that might not have much value because somebody else is promoting that. And I'm just saying, we should be a little, I think, a little careful. I think it's a great idea having staff go through this
Mhm.
and use this quadrant. But I'm just saying, some of them might look very different from a staff perspective than from a community.
Yeah,
perspective. So I'm
understood.
just,
So,
and the monkey could
What-
help, the monkey survey could help ferret that out.
well, also the part of the reason for that, your point's well taken, David, but part of, I think, the idea of this quadrant and of the tracking sheet is that the forum could really ask through Councilmember Margulies and staff what Larkspur can accomplish, right? Because if we focus on things that might be high impact but require regional buy-in or regional funding, et cetera, maybe that's a good broader conversation to have of how you can be activated as a community, but staff is much more limited in scope into what we could accomplish or activate or feel like we could activate our community to accomplish. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I
Um,
totally, and I just said it's something to be cautious. I think some of the actions might fall into that funny zone where if you step back and just look at it from a general societal view, it looks different than it looks at from a Larkspur staff effort view.
Right.
I'm just
And these
putting
are
that-
also layers of filtering, right? So these are all
Right.
climate actions that have gone through and are important enough to be in a climate action plan, right? Like the region, the councils who adopted this, if we thought that this wasn't worthwhile, it wouldn't have even made it into a climate action plan, right? And then it's also, at this time, we've only looked at 2 areas of priority, building electrification and low carbon transportation. So again, we just tried to filter so that not everything, for folks who really care about
Oh, yeah,
climate,
yeah,
and we
yeah.
could always do more, that everything just doesn't end up to be high impact or important, right? So that there's some kind of filtering to prioritize. But that is a flaw or a shortcoming in using this, or a challenge, maybe not a flaw,
Yeah.
but a challenge or a potential limitation.
Yeah, but great tool, well applied here. I just love seeing that there seem to be a lot more content now about the status of the various items that, sitting down with staff and going through, where do these things stand? There's a lot more information. The spreadsheets all look great. It's really, this is a.
It's a lot of info, but at least we know where to find it.
It's a lot of info, but it's
Yeah.
got the right info. And maybe the one comment I realize this, in the big picture, I don't know how important this is, but, those, status, that you tried to fill in as best you could. The one thing I would say is that's exactly where I think the color coding can come in.
We should use
And-
color
And
there.
I know that previously the colors have sometimes been used for priorities. But I'm thinking as a tool, I mean, the priorities are what they are, and you can pull out all the high priorities and just say, here's the list of all the high priorities. You don't really need color for that. And it's not very significant when you have a list that has multiple colors, has those high priorities scattered throughout. But in terms of reporting to the council, how are we doing on implementation of our climate action plan? What you really want to know is what's on track and what's not on track.
Agreed.
And so, like, probably the perfect dashboard isn't the big one that has did you count how many items?
Oh, it's like
140,
200 or something. Yeah,
200?
yeah. It's between 100 and 150 and 200.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's just say 150. It's not the 150, it's among the priority actions. what's on track and what's not.
And-
And that's where the colors are super helpful for what's on track, because you can say, wow, all this green stuff's all doing well. Let's talk about the red stuff that's
Right.
not on track. And that's where it becomes a real simple leadership tool for the council in a very short, maybe just a one-page report to see really easily what are the high priority actions that are not on track. Let's talk about them, so what's needed to get them on track.
Well, so to your point, I think that's where we're trying to get. We're trying to get the public to help us identify
Right.
what are the high priority.
Got it.
Once we've identified them, then we're gonna track the progress on
Exactly,
them.
but I just wanted to point out that any of these, spreadsheets that have the column about status.
Let that be the
That's like the on track, not on track, unknown. That's a perfect place to just put a light shade behind in those cells. That lines up with
100%.
the yellow, red, green. The information's already there.
Yeah.
Just add the color and then you can really see that better.
In fact, if it's not, if we have just a minute, can we pull back up the pivot tables for a second, Shannon, if you don't mind? Because I could use a little
Yeah.
guidance. Super easy change to basically make the only color on the spreadsheet should be for status, so that we can be laser focused on what's hot and what's.
I think so.
Yeah, that's a simple change. I think we can do that at the row by row level. We could also do it at the pivot table level so that we get the snapshot that way. I think I might already know the answer, but I want to ask Kath. I think I overcomplicated these columns by making a distinction between not on track and incomplete needs support. The reason why I did that, and I'm curious, Shannon, if you have a perspective from staff here, if you don't mind going to the summary tab for a moment. Thank you. Right. So this was my perhaps overcomplicated attempt at reading between the lines on some of the status updates that were provided by staff. So there were some instances where staff said, this is not on track because we've not started it. This is not on track because we've deprioritized it, whatever. And then there were other things that were incomplete and needed support, which I know sounds like semantics, and it probably is. But the idea there was we actually raising this so that we can get support to be able to move it forward. I think I'm answering my own question by saying maybe that's not necessary distinction and we should just combine those into the same status category, which is in fact not on track. And if it's not on track, it's either because it hasn't happened, it needs more support, or something is in the way, right? And the details don't really matter. If you want to know, you can double click on the line item, but the status is not on track. With that, are we agreed on? Okay, that's a simple change, I think.
And Katie, just on that table, what would be the third row of the table, including the title sheet of that table, the title line of that table? The one that says row labels, and it says 0 unknown, 1 not on track, 2 incomplete, needs support, 3
Yeah.
on track. Those are the column labels, is that right? Those go with these columns, the percentages?
Correct. Yeah, so the percentages are indicating which one, what percentage of, essentially, what
Right, it's
percentage of
just
all
that
of them.
the column, those names don't line up with the columns, but those, if I counted them across, those would be the column headings, right?
Yes, sorry, the numerical value is confusing. Is that what you're saying? That like. Sorry, help me understand.
Oh, I
Those
guess,
things
I
that you
guess,
want
I
to
guess they are. So this title is this column.
Correct.
This title is this.
Yeah, that's right. I
Yeah,
think
then
when
now-
it's printed, it gets a little
Ah,
wonky.
okay, yeah, it doesn't
Yeah,
have.
this goes to here,
Got
this
it,
goes to
got it,
here.
got
Yeah, it's a little easier when you look at it
Got it.
digitally, but it prints
Somehow the
poorly.
lines went away on the table, the column,
I can have a look at that one.
yeah.
It may need a
Yeah.
reprint.
I think this is helpful, and you mentioned something that I had submitted in a comment. I did this kind of analysis.
Oh, yeah, I
Just-
could see it. It was
just
awesome.
As a general, where are we? Most things on track
Yeah.
or not on track? And of course, I had to guess on a lot of stuff, just like you did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And just to connect the dots here to make sure we're all on the same page. I'll make that change. I'll add the color. Those are 2 action items for me. And then to your point, Sarah, when you said, hey, it's gonna be super tedious for any of us, and also for you, Shannon, to try to go through 150 items and make an assessment on status right now. So for now, if we all are in agreement, we're essentially gonna hold on updating the status until we identify, after the Survey Monkey, the really high priority things that people care about, the correct quadrants, the need to do items. And then we'll do another pass at status on those items so that those are for sure accurately accounted for.
That would be how I would approach it, because we need a baseline. We need to start somewhere. I don't know how, to your point, I don't know how accurate all of the other on track, not on track, the categorization of
Right.
those items. I don't know how that was quantified or qualified. And so I would want to start from a place where we're all in agreement on how we're defining that it's a priority, and then we're discussing how we're going to implement this priority, the actions we're going to take to implement it. And then we are going to track the progress that we're making, since CAF is new and, you know, this is an effort we're doing collaboratively. That's just my perspective. I'm open to others, please, if people believe that we should be tracking things that were already on track or in progress and continuing, but yeah, I feel like we kind of have to start.
Focusing on the
fresh.
high priority
Yeah.
just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, identifying, getting consensus around high priority and focusing on that. is
Yeah.
first step.
okay. So I agree. Yeah.
I have a 30,000-foot view, couple comments. I love this, quadrant. I think it's a great tool, and I appreciate that Shannon had staff. I don't know how many staff were involved in identifying impact and, an effort, but I think that's great. And I think if we're gonna do the Survey Monkey to identify the priorities that need our attention, just to amplify what David was saying, I think that there needs to be, the general public needs to know how we arrived at
Mhm.
what is high impact and, you know, so a little preamble. I don't know what is going out with that Survey Monkey, but I think if I were not involved with CAF and I just got something from the city and said, help us identify priorities, and I saw that there was something that was identified as maybe low impact or low effort, but I feel like it's the most important thing. I want to know how it got that label.
Absolutely, and I think that's where we need to identify as this group right now, how we create a Survey Monkey.
Yes.
Sure, we can identify from what Shannon and staff have done to date, the two quadrants that are sort of the sweet spots. Then how do we create a Survey Monkey that is high level enough so it doesn't, you know, confound people and gives them, but some context, to your point, how we arrived at these categorizations, and then maybe some examples of actions that need to be taken to accomplish this priority. Like, that's my thought on it. It'll get better as I sit down with Shannon and Katie, assuming Katie wants to continue to participate in this.
All in favor?
Definitely. As we sit down and go through that process together and come up with something, maybe what we could do is then send it out to this group before we think about sending it out to the community, but we don't want to have to necessarily wait 2 months if we feel we're all in a good place and that this makes sense to you, and get your feedback and input on, well, you know, I think it would help if you gave this level of clarification on this item. So we would start by drafting something and then get it out to you all first to get your input, before we attempted to send it out to the community. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
You know, one other thing that I think somebody, either you or Shannon, said this. Somehow I got this concept, is maybe using the quadrant and literally writing an abbreviated, the name of that action in its quadrant as determined by the staff review.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're gonna get too many, I mean, the most interested members of the public are sitting right here.
Mhm.
or they're not sitting here because they're out of town or something like
Mhm.
that, but there's, a handful more. And I think very few people that are not focusing on this are gonna spend much time with it, right? So it's gotta be really simple.
Yeah,
But the idea of, if it narrows down to 20 or 30 actions and they're actually listed in the quadrants that so whatever that means, think they ought to be in, it's more like, check these out. Does anything look like it's not in the right spot? Where would you put it?
Right.
So that it's a simple thing and not that there's a number code in that quadrant. They have to look at that number over on this list over here. No one's gonna do that.
Right.
So just an idea for that actually writing the action out in that quadrant.
okay.
It would, seems to me to be maybe the simplest format.
I just feel like, sorry,
So you're gonna list off the actions.
Yeah, so
And
like,
they're asking everybody to, so.
do they
prioritize
look
it
like
from their
they're-
point of view.
do they look like they're in the right quadrants? Do you see something that's shown as, a high priority that you really think isn't such high priority?
Honestly, I think this quadrant ranking probably should be more done by a select, interested in
That's
this,
good.
rather than expecting the public to go through that process. I think it's okay for us to make a reasonable judgment, at least for the first year, to roll this thing out with what have been chosen as, high priority, doable, first steps.
And building on that, maybe the ask, if we present a version of the quadrant in a simple way where they can see where everything is sorted and it's a short list. Then the ask is not, do you agree with these quadrants? It's, or are these placed in the right position? It's, which do you just think, like, which of these is most important to you?
yeah,
And then
that's,
how
that,
So maybe we just
yeah,
start with
I-
a high priority list and say which of these high
Yeah.
priorities
Yes.
are
If
your
we're
high.
being
That's-
really, then we'll definitely get to a short list. We'll
That's-
definitely get to like 20 items with that.
yeah, that's what the
That's
intent,
my thoughts, because
Yeah,
I don't want everybody voting on which quadrant and what.
That's for us to
You know,
do
five
here.
days,
Like
it's
we can debate
no,
that
you
here,
gotta
I
get
think.
some-
Yeah.
I think people might just freeze up and think,
no,
I think that's when people go into the plastic thing, they say, oh, I want to recycle plastic bags and like, we've gotten nowhere with that.
Right, yeah, they may wander in a direction that's not particularly impactful. So if I'm hearing correctly, we can decide if they even need to see the quadrants. Maybe they don't. They just need to see a list. They need to
no,
see a
I don't
list
think
of.
they need to see the quadrants, right?
Right.
I think for the sake of time, because we are getting short on time, if I might just jump in here. So we can sort on this link that everybody has access to the low impact, low effort, high impact, high effort for this group to go in and look at. What our intent is to take the two quadrants that are low effort, high impact, low effort, I'm sorry, I can never, my brain is not working.
Low effort, high impact, high effort, high impact.
Okay, those two quadrants, take those items and send those out in a Survey Monkey. I don't know why I can't say that, sorry, to people, to the general public, and to ask them to prioritize that. So they're only getting a list of maybe 20 things. What are the 5 top priorities for you, Larkspur resident? But before we do that, anything we draft is going to be shown to you all to see, this is what we're thinking of sending out, and we'd like your input on it. But what we'll do is if we sort this table so that the link shows up, Katie will use her magic and create the pivots so that you can see all of the impact efforts so that you'll know which ones line up with which quadrant. And then we'll see it's 20 items or it's 30 items that fall into the 2 sweet spot quadrants. And those are the ones we're going to put out to the general public. Does that make sense?
yes.
Okay.
And totally agree. And I think if we're open to it, it's just 2 questions. It's what are the top what are the top ones for you, Larkspur resident?
Mhm.
And which of these can you help us with? Like, maybe it's the same question, but I think they might prioritize different things that they literally help on, but I think we'd wanna also say, is anyone raising their hand to help us do any of these?
Okay.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah, I like that.
then we'll have a record of them saying they want to help with this thing, which helps.
Yep, perfect. Okay.
I can talk a lot more with Shannon about this offline and with you. You know, one thing is to listen to your conversation, kind of reconcile how we actually are gonna run this from the city side. You know, this plan, like many of our prioritization plans, what we sit there at staff and do, because most of that matrix was filled out by the executive team. So on the executive team, what you're constantly doing is allocating resources, right? Constantly saying, what's the reality that I have the ability to work on this or have somebody work on this? And so those notes are really helpful when they tell you in progress and why, because it's signaling to you, for example, that the public works director has indicated this may not be going as fast as everybody wants, but there's an allocation of resources and I don't really need to think about this anymore. I think you're right. This group should be the one to really start to put them in the matrix boxes. And then what I would encourage you to think about for the public, and we can help with this offline. This year, the CAF is going to advocate for these 5 things to happen that currently aren't being worked on all that much, or not being worked up as fast as we would like. What's your prioritization of that, right? Because one of the things I want to see all of you do is make recommendations to the council that are quickly achievable, right? So you get some success and momentum going. And part of that for staff is realistic expectations of what we can do to support your highest priorities. And I think what we're going to find as Shannon goes back through the notes, and I was a contributor to some of those items, is I think all the managers were sitting there going, sometimes impact is actually about impact to my ability to allocate resources to that fund. I think I thought that quite a bit. To your point about
As
as opposed
opposed-
to staff person.
Yeah.
And you have to remember, although the plan, I appreciate all the enthusiasm, the plan is the city's plan to tell the staff what to do.
Right.
Don't lose sight of that. I think you have 2 great topics: how to encourage the city to have priorities that align with your priorities. And secondly, how do you become emissaries out in the community to encourage changes of behavior that maybe aren't actually part of the CAP? It could be inspired by the CAP.
Yes, that's a great point. You're right, like, I just wanna say it to make sure I get it, because I'm learning how all these processes work. Ultimately, if we ask the public, hey, do you wanna raise your hand to help? Well, this is the action is to recommend this to happen, to go to council so that the city can actually do the thing. So even if we have a bunch of people raise their hands out in the public to help, it's not exactly 1-to-1, because it's really just, it's encouraging us to, yes, in fact, put this in front of council to be prioritized. But maybe if they raise their hand on this EV, they want more EV parking spots, they're not gonna play any real role in going and literally making the parking spots themselves, but maybe it's at least an indicator that they care about that issue. We can engage them with EV programming, we can get them on the right email list, we can connect them with green change, we can do all that offline because they signaled an interest, but it's not literally the CAP. That's what you're saying, right?
I am.
Okay.
I'll make one caveat, because you picked an example that's very interesting to staff right now. Is the residents of the Green Bay Boardwalk are actually going to make that happen, because they figured out how to navigate the government process, and they're going to get some public spaces on the street with EV chargers, but they're going to fund the chargers. It's a great partnership, right? But they had to first figure out, how do I get what I want? Because I don't understand how to navigate the government part of this, right? So they'd ask the right people and get it on our radar. So we, and it's actually a multi-jurisdictional issue if you've ever been out there, because it's a really fun town. Anyway, my point is, I think as these dialogues can occur, one of the breakdowns is, and I think Davis tried to point this out at many council meetings, right? There's a way the government needs to approach this, and there's a way the community might want to approach it. That's why I'm really glad you're not a Brown Act committee, because I think you can now go out and and work on stuff without having to worry that you've tripped, laws that would constrain you.
Okay.
Wow, great discussion, guys. Thank you so much. So action items, then, if I'm hearing this correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that what city manager Dan is suggesting, which I think does make sense, is that we as a CAF decide the priorities. We also ask, we want to get the word out to the community as well, so that we can see who wants to raise their hand and who we can bring into the fold to help drive this effort of prioritization to bring back to council. Did I summarize that correctly? In other words, we're determining the priorities, that
almost
we want to
feel
bring to
that
council.
Some of the members of the group would like to give you their priorities, which may be very different than what staff identified. So you almost have that as a homework.
Yeah, we
That-
don't really know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
That's why, if you can complete your process and put together the apparent list of top priorities
Right.
based on the review that's been done to date, give it to CAP, we'll look at
As
it.
a
Right.
first pass.
And
Yes.
as a first pass and say that looks right, or, it really seems like this one ought to be in, or what's that doing there, I mean,
Yep.
that can be that different perspective.
Mhm.
The community perspective versus staff perspective.
Right.
And then that can guide, I think, both of those things that you just talked about, the communication back to the council. We really think these 5 items are the top things to focus on in 2025, as well as frame up that communication out to the community.
Community.
I still like your idea, Katie, though, about as part of that communication. There are people that are passionate about one thing or other.
Mhm.
And, some of them are sitting right here,
Mhm.
about the big picture, but we all have, favorite focus items within that. But our experience has been that there are community members that are passionate about all kinds of things. And if you can tee something up and say, would you like to help with this? If it aligns with their passion,
Yeah,
they'll tend to step up.
Right, and
It-
maybe once they're engaged.
Yeah.
We can figure out how to channel that engagement towards something meaningful.
Right.
Maybe it's not literally the CAP action item, but it's something in that area that they can run with, which is better than nothing.
okay.
Cool. So I'll take the action item to tee up what you just saw,
The
so that
pivot
it's really
table.
clear. Yes, the pivot table.
So that it identifies the different quadrants.
Yes, so that you all have an easy way to look at those 2 priority quadrants, so we can discuss. And we can, as a CAF group, come to a revision of that list potentially based on our perspective.
And I think it would be helpful, I mean, I was seeing both the Excel spreadsheet and the Google sheet, and it was sort of like, okay, they're basically the same, and a little bit, I think we ought to work on one or the other and not work on.
We did discuss that. That's a good point. Okay, so does the group have a preference? Google versus Excel?
Google shares better, doesn't it?
It is,
But this isn't, I think, so much to comment on it, it's to use it to do our own analysis. I mean, that's how I'm envisioning it.
Well, so anybody can download what's there, but there's gonna,
Maybe use whatever one works best for them, maybe that's it, because we're.
Yeah, I
just
mean, that's
looking
why I
for the
kinda
top
like it.
20 items or whatever. Yeah,
Here's-
maybe, yeah.
I can do either,
Well-
whatever is best for her.
okay, so this is a technicality, because what we have it set up for right now is just view only. So that nobody can make changes to it.
Which is fine, you can't make changes, but you can sort it,
Can you?
so.
Can you
Well,
change the
it's
pivot?
Excel spreadsheet.
You can
Thank you.
sort it in, you could definitely sort it in Excel. You
Yeah,
can definitely
no,
sort it in Excel.
So maybe then
I
that
don't know if-
answers the question.
So to sort it, we'd be using own priorities.
Yeah,
That's what
you,
you're saying.
you
So we
could,
have a way
Yeah, but
to
you
put
wouldn't,
our own
you wouldn't be
priorities
able to
into it.
change them. You don't have edit capabilities on it.
Yeah,
You could just sort it like an Excel spreadsheet.
I think for version control, at least for this step, we stick with Excel, because that way there could be one kind of starting point, and then all of you have that, and you can mess around with it however you want, and it doesn't throw off the original source code. I think that gives.
Can we send it back to you, or how do you get our
Mm,
results?
We're not sending back changes to the Excel spreadsheet. We're just using the Excel spreadsheet to do whatever kind of analysis you want to do.
Can we add another column to be like our priorities, and then, so you can now still have your 5 columns or whatever there many are, and, sort it however you want. But you can also say, well, what's your priorities? And so see what we all come up with.
I think if it's okay with the group, I'd like to maybe offline have a think about what is the simplest technical solution to equip you with a place where you can look at the short list, make your own recommendations, and then easily communicate that back. I'm not gonna figure it out on the fly. But
Yeah.
I think if we have a beat to try to solve that, we can talk.
And we were also thinking that SurveyMonkey would help us with that aspect, right? That would be the way we could find out, what are people saying, are there five top priorities, and then figuring out from the data we get from SurveyMonkey, 10 out of 15 people said this thing. 3 out of 15 people said this thing, so that we could then stack rank them, if that's the right way to describe it, based on the most commonly held belief in a survey. So I think we need to do some more thinking around it. There are definitely logistics.
Figure it out.
But yeah, and unfortunately, we were not getting to our last item, which was brought up in an email by a member who's not here tonight regarding the electrification of leaf blowers, electrification of landscaping equipment, excuse me. And I don't want to skim over it. We have 3 minutes left. Is the best thing to do is to table it for our next meeting?
I would say so.
Yeah,
Just to give it its due.
Doesn't seem like it's a very high priority thing.
okay,
I mean, everybody hates the leaf blowers.
yeah, okay,
Sarah, I have, just one other thing I'd like to bring up, though. It's very brief,
okay,
before we close.
sure.
There are 2 other ongoing issues right now, outside of the immediate jurisdiction here, that Larkspur may want to weigh in on, and some jurisdictions are currently weighing on. One is AB 306, and there are various groups that are putting together like sign-on letters, either to oppose or oppose unless amended. Some jurisdictions, local here, have sent their own letters into President Pro Tem Mike McGuire,
Mhm,
saying, we oppose. San Rafael has done that
mhm.
just recently. So there's that ongoing. And then the other thing is it's starting to heat up about the air districts, the Bay Area air districts, zero NOx rules. And you may have read that the South Coast Air District just late last week decided not to go ahead to impose its zero NOx rules. So that's
No.
Los Angeles and Orange counties. I mean, it's a really big deal.
Mhm.
And various groups again are putting together letters urging that the air district maintain its current implementation schedule, which is January 1st, 27 for water heaters, and January 1st, 29 for space heaters. So I just want to bring those up, that some Marin jurisdictions, or either as the jurisdiction or as members of the council, I think at least one mayor has written in, I think Mill Valley's mayor wrote a letter to the air district urging that they hold the line on the zero NOx implementation. So I just wanted to bring that up. I think this group may want to come forward with something to the council to at least consider that. I don't know if that's come up in the managers, the city managers association at all, but I know that there's some talk about this.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to get that on the table here.
Any thoughts or other suggestions? I mean, I personally am in favor of doing it.
Like pulling together some language to essentially.
Submitting a letter to Mike McGuire, who's the Senate Pro
Yeah,
Tem, to
and-
say that the jurisdiction opposes
Yep.
AB 306 without some amendments to provide for green codes. Right?
Right.
And then the other one, I don't know about this new NOx Bay Area air quality control.
I met with Supervisor Colbert just last week because he is now Marin's representative to the air district.
Okay,
And he's new in that capacity, knows
Mhm.
nothing about the background on zero NOx, so I was trying to bring him up to speed.
okay, okay.
Encourage him to, support holding the implementation dates. So I'm just saying, I don't know, I can offer something up as a public comment in a council meeting, but I thought I wanted to bring it up here too, so maybe that would be part of your report to at least, it came up in this forum for the city or individual members of the council to consider possibly joining in, either writing or doing that cosign. Kind of thing.
Do you have a letter you could share, something that's already, have you seen any of the letters?
I
written?
have seen some letters. I could provide something. Why don't I provide something to you and you can.
Okay, okay, and then I would share it with, I'll share it with everybody
Yeah.
here.
I'd love to see
Yeah.
them.
Because ultimately, it needs to be a recommendation from the group.
Good.
That, yeah, we want to move to ask council to write a letter. And so if you have something to share, David, I think that would be a good next step.
So just so you're clear, because like anything, there's process.
Yeah.
So the city's policy, adopted policy, which a lot of the Marin cities have, is initial step is to defer to the countywide committee, legislative committee, to take positions on behalf of all of Marin. I'm not sure. I believe they took a position on 306. I'd have to check. The second thing is the council allows specific requests from Cal cities to go on the agenda. They have not put out an opposition call because they're trying to negotiate, and they tend to not like to have cities turn in letters requesting amendments. They tend to want cities.
Cal cities?
Yeah, they tend to prefer that their members support or oppose things and let them negotiate the amendments.
Okay, so
So,
they actually did put out their position on AB 306 is that they don't support it unless it's amended.
right, so
Yeah.
a lot of times I have to check whether they've put out a call for letters, but
Okay,
doesn't mean we can't do it. I'm just telling you the process, right? So then step 3 is the council just puts on the agenda and decides on their own that they want to do it. So you could give your request to the council.
Yeah.
And then they could decide if it would be on the next agenda to
okay,
do it. Now, 306 is moving, so, our process may not go fast enough
Right.
to accommodate that. Then, any council member can write a letter, but not on city letterhead, taking a legislative position unless they're the mayor and the mayor's determined that there's such an urgency that she needs to write it on letterhead outside of the process I just described.
Mayor letterhead or?
No, the
City
city's
letterhead.
letterhead. Now, any council member can write whatever they want as a citizen, and they can say, I happen to be a council member, right? So, that's our process. I will say Senator McGuire takes the Marin Legislative Committee very seriously, since we're a pretty vocal group in his jurisdiction. So I'll check and see where their position is.
Okay, that would be really helpful.
Do they meet monthly? And
what is it, the Marin
the
legislative?
Marin, council mayors and council members of Marin County.
Oh, that,
Yeah,
okay,
Marin
okay.
City Council.
Oh, MCCMC.
Yeah, it's their ledge.
Mhm.
It meets once a month. It's
Okay.
actually one of the only committees that has a paid staff person, so.
And when's the next meeting?
I wanna say they meet the first Monday of the month, so they may have just met,
I think they did.
yeah.
Or they met no, we just met, I was on the meeting in the end of May.
Oh, end of May.
Yeah, it was the end of May. I think it's the 3rd, maybe the 3rd.
Do you know who the chair of that is right now?
The
The
chair-
Labor Committee
The chair's been Alex Fredericks for a long time.
of the Ledge Committee.
Yeah,
Yeah, the 25th.
Yeah. she's
June. Okay.
Tiburon council member.
So the action item was, Dan, you would gonna follow up to see
We'll
if they've
check and
taken
see
a
what the
position?
status is. It happens that Shannon's also our point
Okay.
person for ledge stuff, so
She
she wears a lot of
everywhere.
hats. So she'll actually be able to, she was actually the paid person for that ledge committee for a while, so.
Okay, so you're talking about the Marin Legislation Committee, but not the mayors and councils.
No, same thing.
It is the same
Same
thing.
thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the Ledge Committee of Marin.
The
Mayors.
legislative committee within MCCMC,
MCCMC,
thank
right,
you.
yes.
Okay.
And then,
Thank you.
They also have a climate committee, although.
They used to, I don't think it's active anymore.
Yeah, the Ledge Committee is the only one that actually has powers in the bylaws to go. To do things, do significant things, yeah, so. And there's actually a lobbyist, a jointly paid for lobbyist.
So sorry to bring that right at the end.
No, no.
I wanted to get it out on the table because it's happening right
Yeah,
now.
306 is an interesting one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, thank you all for your time and for your continued commitment to this process. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate you showing up and helping us navigate the process and find out, how we can best engage the community and best set the priorities for the climate action. So,
Thank
Thank you.
Sarah,
Thank you,
and-
Sarah.
Yeah, thank you
Dan.
so much.
Yeah.
Shannon.
thanks, Shannon. You can go to bed now, poor lady.
Right?
Yes, thank you.
I had some of these printed out, to try to engage folks at the last music, the dad band, the Chamber of
Nice.
Commerce event in Piper Park. So I wanted to ask if anybody wants to take them, to share them with friends or community, just to promote CAF. I have them, so if anybody would like to take. Yeah, please do. I'm gonna put them on the back table here, and you can just help yourself on your way out.
Music in the park on Friday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
There's another
there it
conference,
is.
so.
I know, I'm actually gonna try to also get, does somebody else work directly with, the resilient neighborhoods?
I know them pretty well.
Yeah, I
Apparently,
do
talking
know
with
that